Okay, welcome everybody who's watching this later on. We are recording with some students that are attending in real time, obviously not in person. This is a virtual webinar. Today we're going to talk about making sure you're on track to graduate. And I've always wanted to do this recording, probably for the last few years. One of my most rewarding types of appointments that I have with students is reviewing their last semester, just because those students are so excited. They're almost done. They've got so many great things to look forward to. But we want to make sure you get past the finish line and that no details are overlooked. And in the past, there have been some tools like DegreeWorks that we're going to talk about today that have kind of worked against students and advisors and made it so that there were some mistakes made. And I really want to try to help all of you avoid those mistakes. And the good news for all of you is that DegreeWorks is much better now. There's always going to be some level of issues and mistakes here and there, but I'm going to try my best to cover where you can feel very confident that it is accurate and where you definitely want to talk to somebody like me or your advisor or ALAC, just to make sure that any questions are addressed, any issues are addressed. And I'm one person in the department that can help you. There are other people, and I think it is always good to talk to somebody else and to make sure you understand personally how your credits are applying to your degree, right? That's part of my job. I look at it as I'm not teaching engineering, but I am teaching you how to double check that you feel confident that you're meeting all of the requirements. All right. So for those of you who have never seen me before or met me before, my name is Kate Stockton, and I work as part of a team for Maine Undergraduate Student Services. You've probably seen our window. We're right across the elevator on the second floor in GEC. And in that picture on the right is Julie. She's on my left side. She works with me. She's our administrative support. So she works at the reception desk and answers questions to students and helps them make appointments with me. Helps them track down Tom Haley if he's their advisor, and that's Tom on the right. He is one of our faculty members. He is a nuclear engineer by, that's what his degree is in. He went to RPI and he got his PhD from RPI, and he teaches here. And he's also our director of undergraduate student services. And he knows a lot about degrees and RPI and all of the main majors. So that's our team. That's how you can get a hold of me. So either by email or by phone. Phone is a little more difficult on days like today, like on Tuesdays. I typically work from home. So email is usually the best way. I'm also on Discord. We have Discord link on our link tree. And our link tree link is a QR code right outside our office, as well as the bottom of all of my emails. Okay, so I remembered to hit record at the beginning. So this was my reminder to make sure I hit it so that, again, so that we can record all of this great information for you to look later, to share with friends. Remember, this is going to be Maine specific, and Maine specific for this time frame is 2023. So, things can change in another year or two, hopefully not too much. But for now, we're going to cover what's relevant as of November in 2023. We're going to talk about degree tracking tools. We're going to look at some typical DegreeWorks audits for seniors. I'm just going to go through it quickly. No personal information is shown in this, no grades, or definitely no RINs or names anywhere in here, just to kind of show you, because I see these all the time, and sometimes I lose sight that students only see their own. So you wouldn't necessarily know when things don't look right, or that it's not normal, or it is normal if it doesn't look great. And we're going to talk about some various issues that can come up that can cause degree clearance problems and how to prevent them. Cover some tips, and again, we will cover your questions if you have them at the end. And if you do have questions, pop them in the chat. If you don't want to worry about forgetting what your question is, that's fine. All right, so advisors and students have access to 3 main degree progress tools. So starting in freshman year, when you're working with your hub advisor, these are the tools that are available and that they try to teach students about. Number 1, DegreeWorks. It's probably the last one that the hub likes to talk about, only because there's not a lot in there yet, unless the student brought in AP credits or they're meeting during the spring semester once the fall grades are in there. Basically, most of the time it's just a blank template of courses. Although there is some really neat tools within DegreeWorks. Like I said, it's had a lot of issues, so I think the hub has been a little reluctant to show students that too early because they don't want them relying on it if there's a likelihood there's a problem. So some of you, if you're juniors or seniors, when you were freshmen, DegreeWorks was a bit more of a mess. So that's why it may not be a tool that you're so familiar with. The other tool would be your unofficial transcript, and you should have access to this in SIS. I have the ability to see main students' unofficial transcripts, but so do you. You can see your own transcript, which is a helpful tool as well. And I typically will compare what DegreeWorks says to your transcript just to make sure we're not missing anything. The transcript is chronological. DegreeWorks is organized by different sections. And the third one is your 4-year plan. And we really, really suggest students keep track whatever way works best for you. Most hub advisors kind of set you up with your 4-year plan, but I've seen students kind of redo it in their own way that makes sense to them. Some like the color coding per semester, some like to manually move the classes around. So, it is your degree, whatever works for you. I've seen and worked with all different formats, and typically I'm fine as long as I can kind of follow along. But the tool that I use, especially for senior meetings, is DegreeWorks. And even when DegreeWorks had a lot more flaws, the reason why I use this for senior meetings is because this is our tool for degree clearance. So if DegreeWorks is making any mistakes, I kind of need to know about them. Your advisor kind of needs to know about them so that we can double check and make sure that the mistake that we think it's making is really a mistake. And if so, we can make a note in there just so that degree clearance during that process is a little easier and quicker and smoother. In our department, we have 2 degree clearance officers, one that does the nuclear students, and then one that does aero and mech. So our degree clearance officer who does aeronautical and eventually starting this semester, aerospace as well, and mechanical has a lot of work to do because there are a lot of students in those now 3 majors. And along with that, we have a lot of students who dual with mechanical or sometimes with aero or nuclear, and some very common ones like the aero mech dual and the DIS mechanical. So that's why I like to take a look and see what it's going to show the degree clearance officer. And just going back. So one thing I want to point out here on this screen, again, if you want to open up your DegreeWorks to kind of follow along and see, it'll seem pretty similar depending on what your major is. There'll be those differences. If you are going into your last semester and you've registered for all the classes and were successful in getting the classes you needed, you probably will see a 98%. And a lot of students ask me, Kate, why does it only say 98? I got everything. What's missing? And the only thing that's missing is that those classes aren't done yet. You're still taking classes that don't have grades, so they're not final yet. And you're registered in the rest of the classes you need, but you haven't completed them yet. So that's why it says 98. It'll say 100 once all of your grades are accounted for and you passed all of your courses. So that most students don't even see 100 because by then they're long gone. They've graduated and moved on. The other thing to note is, again, like I said, if you believe you've finished your registration, you're good to go. You do want to double check where it says the name of your degree in progress, and then underneath that it says the credits required is 132. This is the Aero Mac. This is the example that's on the screen, and the student has 132 applied. So good, there's nothing missing there. That's the most important thing up front. If it said 130, then we're missing some credits somewhere, and that would be typically very accurate if it's missing credits. Of course, sometimes it does make mistakes, but it would be something you want to look into. And sometimes it's more. So for the AeroMech Dual, students have very specific classes they have to take and very little choice, let's put it that way. They have the choice over what Haas classes they take, and beyond that, they have a checklist of classes that they have to take. So sometimes students will do an elective, sometimes they'll do URP for credit. Anything like that would be in addition to the 132 because it's not fulfilling a graduation requirement. It does get used towards the GPA, but that's where you might see an AeroMech student that has like 134 or something like that. Again, if you have any questions that I kind of covered on this screen, pop them in the chat. We'll review them at the end. Okay, so the next parts of DegreeWorks, and like I said, when I meet with seniors, and if I've met with any of you that are seniors, you've probably heard this before, I go section by section. And the next sections that show up, none of these have that section right under the heading that says the credits required and credits applied, because none of these are separate requirements. They are all zooming in to another part of your degree audit that actually is counting those credits. So I know when I'm looking at the communication intensive section that sustainability debates and space vehicle design should be somewhere else in that student's audit. The sustainability debates will most likely show up in the Haas core or sometimes in free electives, and that's okay. That's okay if it shows up in free electives as long as it's getting counted somewhere. And space vehicle design should be showing up almost all the way at the bottom where the capstone course is. And that's a question I do tend to get because most students don't do their capstone until their last semester. It'll show that it's missing their major comm intensive and students don't know what that is. And all that is all of the capstone courses, at least within the main department. I'm not 100% sure if this is for every department on campus, but all of the capstone courses count as the major intensive course, the major comm intensive course. It's different than Haas, but you do need to have two comm intensive courses. One's going to be your Haas and one's going to be your major comm intensive. The major one, you don't really have to think about it because you have to take a capstone course. It's one of the named requirements. All right. So the next section is the Haas inquiry. And I use this example because your Haas inquiry can be the same course as your Haas comm intensive if that course is both of those things. And this would show in SIS and class search, it would have both attributes attached to it as a comm intensive and as a Haas inquiry. And that's fine because remember, we're not counting credits yet. This is just a zoom in to make sure you've met these requirements. So we're not double counting these classes. That's another kind of confusing part of this. We are just saying that one of the courses that you took has met this requirement. And that's what that's showing us. And also, like I said, if it was a different Haas inquiry than your comm intensive, I would want to see that course shown either in your Haas core or your free electives. It should be represented somewhere else. The next section is the archway, one of the ones that I get so many questions about or I have to talk to students about, and many students, I think less and less because, again, we just graduated our first group at last May, first whole group of students. that required Arch as a graduation requirement. There was a couple early ones before that, but last year was the whole group, was the first group to do that. So up until then, there was no real way to like hold students accountable for graduation, and now this is how they're held accountable. It's in DegreeWorks. Our degree clearance officer cannot clear students if they're missing either of these requirements. It's really important for students to understand that. The most confusion surrounds students who got exceptions, because the exception for Arch only comes in for summer classes. When a student gets exempt from Arch, what that means is that they do not have to be here for a summer session. It does not mean they don't have to do something for an away semester. They do. And it does not mean that they don't have to take the Arch prep course. They do. So students have to take both of those, get credit for it, and get S's. And what I mean by credit is you have to get the S. It's 0 credit, which means it doesn't cost you anything, but you do have to do the different requirements for Arch. I talk to students about this a lot, and I'm very upfront with students. I don't work for the Arch office, so I hope students know that they can come to me. They're not gonna hurt my feelings if they don't like Arch or they're not happy about meeting these requirements. I get it, I totally get it, I've heard it before, but I'm just here to help you navigate through this and to understand what you need to do to fulfill those requirements. So I just wanted to make sure to address those. Okay, so HOS is another section that can be confusing because you do have your HOS core that you have to meet, but you also have your pathway. And pathway is 3 courses that all fall within one pathway. The pathways are all laid out within the catalog of the year that you started at RPI. And ideally, the 3 pathways would also be represented somewhere in your HOS core. Sometimes it doesn't count things exactly that way. And again, that's okay, as long as you meet at least the 22 HOS credits, the 3 pathway courses, you get your HOS Intensive, which we already knew from above, and you have your inquiry course. So this example here shows a student who has taken the Chinese courses, and all 3 of these courses are somewhere in her HOS core. Then she has 2 outside of pathway courses. Her outside of pathway courses are a writing elective that she got from AP, and her sustainability debates, which happen to count as her HOS inquiry and her HOS Intensive. So that's what you need. You need to have your 3 pathway plus 2 additional ones and meet all the other requirements. So the good news is if your HOS section looks completed, like everything's checked off, there's no red circles missing something, it's very unlikely that it's counting it and you did it incorrectly. Okay, it doesn't really make mistakes that way. Usually, if it says you're missing something, sometimes it's wrong. And in that case, we would want to meet and talk and make sure we understand that it's wrong, or kind of like look in a little further to make sure that we understand what it's looking for, and then make a note about it. Okay, so that's HOS. You may have questions. We can definitely address those later. But we want to make sure that hopefully everything is checked off. Then you get to your major section. Again, it may look different depending on what your major is, if you're doing a dual, that sort of thing. This student's a mechanical student, no dual. So this is where basically I skim down, make sure everything has a green check or a blue circle. And then I do look, if you look on the credits, I obviously blacked out or whited out the grades. But if you look at the credits column, I'll look through that really quickly. I'll scan it because I want to identify if there's any transfer courses, because transfer courses don't always transfer like for the same amount, I should say, as a RPI equivalent. So if there's a transfer course in this list, I like to zoom in and just make sure it matches what the RPI course is, because I don't want any missing credits there. And I zoom down to the technical electives to make sure that DegreeWorks is reading what the student took, and those courses can indeed count as the right technical electives. And this one is, the student took Inventor Studio 3 as their main technical elective, the first one. Everybody that's a mechanical needs at least one main 4,000 level course. And then their second one is a little bit more flexible. It can be anything in School of Engineering, School of Science at the 4,000 level. But what it is important is if you look at the top there, it's kind of odd how it's counting some of these credits, and that's because this student actually has, they're using computer science, but it's actually, I don't know, maybe this was the best example because it's going to get a little bit down a rabbit hole. You can't use just computer science in place of numerical methods. You actually needed another course, but to make the credits all work, they had to put something in that spot. So they put computer science, and then somewhere else on this degree audit would be numerical computing, because that's the other required course. So this student happened to take 8 credits of courses in place of a 3 credit requirement. So it's definitely no shortcut, and it's not any easier. So if you started getting excited about taking computer science instead of numerical methods, it's not that simple, and it's definitely not an easier shortcut way to do it. But you see computer science is 4 credits, numerical methods is 3. So that's one additional credit that is extra. And then both of the technical electives are 4 credits that the student took, and those requirements are both 3 as well. So student actually has 3 extra credits that are showing up, and that's why it says, so now it says 61, which is interesting. I can tell you why it says that in a minute. So it says 61, obviously 3 plus 57. I don't know if you can see that. 57 is required. So those 3 extra would get us to 60. The reason why it says 61 is another little bit of a rabbit hole, I guess. Inventor Studio 2 is actually a 4 credit class for a 3 credit requirement. And the reason for that is it includes PD3. So that's why it's got that extra credit in there. If the student already had credit for PD3, they would only net 3 new credits. And if they didn't take PD3 yet, then they would be able to use that extra credit towards their PD3 requirement. So lots of time on this one. There's lots of little hidden gems on this audit here. But I think hopefully some of it's useful. Students may find something in there that kind of helps explain why DegreeWorks doesn't seem to add up sometimes, and that's because there's those hidden credits somewhere. And we're not there yet. We're working towards it on the registrar side to actually show anything extra down in free electives. And you can count anything extra as a free elective here, like those 2 extra technical electives can be the extra credits, can be used as free electives. DegreeWorks just won't show it. So in that case, I would typically make a note so that a student can kind of track that if they only have 10 free electives, they can use those 2 extra to complete their free electives. Okay, so here's the juicy part of the webinar, the part I really want to showcase issues that I want all of you to avoid. So one thing, and this is not super common, but occasionally I'll have a student who really doesn't understand that free electives are required. Yes, they're not free as in you don't have to do them. You do need to have free electives. Now, a student that's doing a dual, they actually do get free electives. They're just using the other degree to fulfill those free electives. If you're just doing one major, you need to make sure that you have at least 12 unique credits that are not used somewhere else in your degree audit. Again, because your goal is to track every single one of those credits that we're saying is your total credits. Mechanicals, they need 129. Aeros and nuclear students, they need 130 total credits. And all 3 are requiring 12 free electives, okay? separate for duals, anybody that's in a dual with something else. And then if you're doing a minor, you can use your free electives to finish a minor. If it's a Haas minor, you can use your Haas core. Make sure you get all your Haas requirements included, and then anything else you need, you can use as your free electives. You can also take classes in subjects that don't count for technical electives or Haas, such as management or astronomy. I have a lot of students doing astronomy courses right now. It's more than the last past few years. You can do more Haas classes, more engineering courses. You can do URP for credit. So there's a lot of options there. Try not to get caught up too much in what all this says after 12 credits. I know what it says or what it's trying to say or why it's there. And I'm just here to tell you all that says is half of that is what's underneath unmet conditions for the set of requirements. 1 credit non-engineering courses graded satisfactory or unsatisfactory do not count. So that is part of what it's saying there. If you really tease that out, you would see that 1 and grade equals F and all the different engineering that's there. That's all that's saying. And then after that, it's saying you can't use anything that's counting for your arch requirements as free electives. So that's why all of that is listed there. And sometimes students actually think that that's all they can take for free electives, which is not the case. Anything can count, again, except for that 1 credit non-engineering SRU course. But think about anything that's offered at RPI, everything's open to you as long as you can get into the course. You know, it doesn't mean that it's free, so you can take whatever, and that Kate said you're allowed to register for everything. You have to have the prereqs, you have to not be restricted out of the class, or the faculty has to let you into the class. So hopefully that clears up any pre-elective questions. So the second common issue is missing arch requirements. I kind of already covered that, but you have the 2 that you have to meet, and we really need students to track it, and the best way to track it is in DegreeWorks because it will tell you when you're registered for it. It'll be a blue circle. It'll show everything's good, you're registered, you're on your way. Both of these have LMS components to them that show what you need in order to get the S. So there's activities for the arch prep course. There's writing assignments for while you're doing your away semester. Just please make sure you follow up on those and complete those assignments, because otherwise we're going to be hounding you until you're almost ready to leave here. Because like I said, our degree clearance officer cannot clear anybody who's missing either of these requirements. And I do spend an awful lot of time talking to students about these. Either I'm tracking them down or they're coming and asking me why they're missing them. So I can help a student problem solve and figure out what's missing. How do they kind of finish completing these? So if you're on the normal track, you're going to kind of be put through a chute, like an automatic thing where you have to make these decisions that automatically get you registered and what you need to be registered for. If it's an internship or a co-op or a civic engagement, you're going to go through the CCPD and they're going to help get you registered. Everyone else kind of gets registered through the Office of Undergrad Education and the Arch Office. But again, I can help students if they're trying to figure out why, if anything goes wrong with that. Okay, issue number 3 is no Haas pathway declared. So on the left side of the screen, you see the student. It's right on the checklist, kind of like the table of contents section. And that student hasn't declared their pathway. They may have everything completed, but they haven't chosen the pathway yet. They will not graduate. So I usually am the one who's tasked with tracking those students down and chasing them down and saying, choose a pathway and choose this one if it's obvious which one's going to work. If it's not obvious and you've kind of been haphazardly taking Haas, which definitely last year was the case, and still there's some students that haven't been following a pathway, come to me earlier rather than later, because we still have some time to hopefully pick different courses and make sure you get a pathway in, because you do need a pathway in order to graduate. So this student on the right side has everything, they've met all their HOS requirements, they just don't have that third pathway course. So, so it's either going to mean he's going to have to register for something else, or I'm going to have to work with HOS and the student and try to figure out if there's any substitutions that could be made or a change in the pathway. So those are the things that we kind of work through. Okay, another common one. Students that when they come here, maybe their AP grades haven't come in yet. They feel confident that they got a 5 on that Calc 1 exam. So they tell their hub advisor, I'm good, I can take Calc 2. So they say, okay, go ahead and register for Calc 2. The problem is that maybe they didn't get a 5, maybe they got a 4. And then for their class year, they may not be able to use a 4 to count for Calc 1 credit. So we can't just grandfather them in and kind of gift them the 4 credits. Maybe that's an option somewhere else. Unfortunately, at RPI, it's not. You can't waive those credits. You have to have those credits somewhere. Most of the time, students have to take a higher level math because there's no other options at the 1,000 or 2,000 other than what we already have our students take. So then they end up having to take something like linear algebra or numerical computing. Sometimes we can use another class, but you really don't want to end up in this situation in your last semester. Like, definitely follow up, see what happened. Sometimes the students just never had their AP score sent. That is kind of not being allowed to be taken care of at the end anymore. Now for this class, it probably would be. We could probably try to get those credits in, but after this year, it's not an option for students. They're only going to have a year to get those AP scores in. So if that's the case, if you're falling in this category, hopefully I've already reached out to you. If you, students that are kind of dual majors, sometimes they don't end up on a list and I never see them until the very end and see the problems. So if this is you, make sure you reach out to me so that we can try and figure out what you need to make up those credits. This happens a lot with Calc 1, occasionally with Physics 1, and then the next issue I'm going to go over happens also in the Math and Science core. Transfer credits that fall short. Again, Math and Science core, this happens a lot also with engineering courses. If RPI's requirement is 4 credits and the transfer credit only comes in for 3, we do not just overlook that. There's no gifting or waiving of that extra credit. You have to make up that credit, and you really have to make it up within the school that that course belongs to. So for this student, at the top, you can see they only have 23 credits and the section requires 24. And remember, ultimately, we need to get to 29 if it's mechanical, 130 if it's aero or nuclear. And when everything else is addressed, this student's going to be a credit short. And they can't use like an extra, can't use an extra HOS class or anything like that. It has to be within the school, and this would be the School of Science because physics falls under the School of Science. So we need to make sure the student accommodates for that. Many times this situation, a student would take a 4 credit technical elective. If they're mechanical, that would be a School of Science technical elective, because that way they can use 3 credits for their technical elective and the 1 extra to make up the missing School of Science credit. Again, you have to be intentional with this. So if you don't transfer credits, it's not an issue. We don't have any RPI courses that aren't the right amount of credits. It's really only comes down to transfer credits. And I try to address it with anybody I know that's transferring credits in ahead of time so that they understand that they have to build this in. But I don't see all the transfer forms. Faculty advisors typically are the ones signing this. And sometimes they just don't cover that with students, or the student forgets when nobody keeps track of it. So that's something important to know because it does, prevent a student from graduating. So very small group of students this would apply to, but students that are in our ROTC program, there is ways to get substitutions for PD2. It's very complicated, and by the time a student hears the way that they can get this their ROTC courses to satisfy PD2. Most of them realize I might as well just take the 2-credit PD2. And the reason is that you still need to have at least 22 credits for Haas. So I found a really great example here where actually the student's okay, but if they didn't have pretty much that second snapshot towards the bottom, the student only ends up with 20 credits. They haven't taken the 2-credit PD2. They've met all the other Haas requirements. So it seems okay because they said, well, I can use my ROTC leadership to fulfill the PD2. But again, they need to have at least those 22 credits of Haas, which they don't. Unless they're being intentional, sorry for all the copy, unless they're being intentional like this student was, and making sure they end up with 2 extra Haas somewhere else, either in not applied or in their free electives, that can be used to substitute those Haas credits. So that's just, again, I don't want to spend too much time on that because it's really a small group of students, but that does cause a lot of confusion and issues for students for degree clearance. We certainly don't want any students, let alone our ROTC, that have plans right after graduation to serve and do what they need to do for whatever the branch that they're working for. They don't like to hear those students can't graduate. So I want to make sure to address that. So the student took 2 extra, and I did white out because we do have such a small group. I did not include the free electives, like the names of the courses, but I do know that one of those 4 credits the student registered for is a Haas class. So 2 of those extra credits can be used to substitute for the missing 2 in the Haas core. All right, so that's a majority of the issues. There's always something that gets thrown in that I've never seen before. Again, as long as you're following everything and you understand that you've met all the requirements, if you've taken your courses all at RPI and everything's checked off, such a slim chance that you did something wrong. If you took any transfer credits, just double check those, make sure you're not exceeding any of the limits, make sure you're getting exactly the credits that you need or getting the makeup credits that you need. Make sure to apply to graduate. Anybody who is going to be a May graduate this May, you can do it as soon as this January, as soon as you're back on campus, taking classes, you should go in and apply to graduate. There's no reason to delay. You shouldn't be doing any curriculum changes anyway in your last semester, and nothing will happen. Nobody's going to look at that list because that's all it does. It puts you on a degree clearance list. Nobody's going to look at the list until March 8th when it's due. So even if there are working on changing anything, adding a course, anything like that, there's no reason to wait to get that done first. Just remember to apply to graduate. You could not submit minor forms or anything, changing your major, adding a dual. You could not do that in your last semester, so you shouldn't be doing that anyway. Do that now if you're a May grad, May 24 grad. If you're a junior, do that now, or do it definitely not in your last semester. Always check double check your total credits because that's going to give you an indication if you're falling short. Obviously, something's missing. And if you know you took courses that won't count for any degree requirements, typically those are pretty reliable in showing up in a not applied section. That is going to be your new total. So if your degree is 130 and you know you've got 4 credits of management courses that aren't being applied somewhere else, it can't be used as free electives, then your new total to be adding up to should be 134. Hopefully that makes sense. But basically, let's say you already have 12 free electives and you take a management course. Management courses can't count anywhere else. So you know that that total is going to be 4 more because management courses are 4 credits. You can't use your co-op credits for free electives. This is where the transcript will throw students off because it looks like it's adding in an extra credit. And what I do a lot is I compare the totals from the transcript to what DegreeWorks is telling me. And that's where things can get off a lot because if you look at the transcript, and it's not always reliable like this, but sometimes it will count your co-op credit So you'll see the semester before your co-op, you have 94 credits, and the semester after co-op or during co-op, you'll see 95. It's added that credit in, and you cannot use that credit. So when you look at your total on your transcript, it'll be 1 credit more than it should be. Again, getting a little bit into the weeds, but just be aware of that. DegreeWorks is actually, I want to say 100% reliable on this, not counting those co-op credits just because of all of that that's listed in the free elective section. It's preventing it from counting those, but the transcript isn't like a system like that. It's just showing you almost a receipt of what you took. So it just adds things together and calculates what your GPA and your total credits are. No double counting. Courses can only fulfill 1 requirement at a time. Again, unless we're talking a 4 credit course that is fulfilling a 3 credit requirement and then using the extra credit for free electives. But still, those credits are only getting counted once. So you cannot use like a Haas class that's counted in your Haas score as a free elective as well. It can count in either place, okay? But it cannot count in both places. And you would be 4 credits short because Haas credits or Haas courses are typically 4 credits. So this is my reminder to stop recording now. So anybody who is watching this later on, please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm in the JEC in 2012, right across from the elevators, or you can email me at stockk@rpi.edu. All right, I'm not saying goodbye yet. If you have questions, I'm going to address those next. But for anybody watching, I'll see you soon.